you are one of the few privileged ones who have seen Brian Lara score 501. You must tell us what it was like watching somebody bat that way and score 500.
So in '94, South Africa were touring England for the first time, and so we didn't have Donalds. So the club signed this young West Indian guy who was a little bit of exciting to watch and had a big reputation coming up. They signed Brian Lara the week before he got the 375 to break Gary Sober's record. Warwickshire signed him the week before that. Because the signing we actually had was Manoj Prabhakar, injured an ankle. Yes, an ankle, couldn't quite see out the full system. So we signed Brian Lara, and he came to the club, and his form, the form that he displayed was just superfluous. I mean, magnificent to watch someone that good every day.
He had a bit of luck as well. Anderson Cummings was our overseas player from the West Indies, who knew Brian very well, played a lot of Test cricket with him, and with him in the West Indies team. And he actually said to us he'd got a plan the night before that he was going to go short at him early on, because he'd get further and further and further across, and then he was going to go wide of the crease and try and bowl him round his legs, and he did. He knocked leg stump out of the ground on 10 to be called a no ball. So on 10 he was bowled for a no ball. On 17, I think it was, he was nicked off straight to the wicket keeper. Just a simple, straightforward catch that any wicket keeper just gobbles up normally. And Chris Scott, our wicket keeper, who was a fine wicket keeper, dropped it. Just went straight in and straight out. And his immortal words were, "If you don't mind a bit of bad language, if you can cope with that," he said, "Watch this bastard get 100 now." and 4 days later, we were still bowling at him.
And the great thing about that knock, it was a game that was going nowhere. The Durham team didn't want to play a game, so they just wanted to bowl. But Brian Lara, we was sat having lunch that day, and he was on 280 odd. He was on 130 odd not out overnight, and he got another 100 or so between start of play and lunch. So he was on about 260, say, whatever, I can't remember what it was. But he was, and we were chatting, we were having lunch, and he says, "Guys, you reckon I can get on from a record?" It was myself, Brian, my teammate called Paul Smith, and a couple of others. And he went, "What record?" And he says, "Of course you'll get past 375. He says, "No, not that one." He says, "I'm Hanif Mohammed." And we went, someone said, "What? 499? No chance. You've got no chance." And he just said, "Watch me." He called that record when he was like 250 runs out from it, and had 4 hours of batting left to back. And so the game was going to finish half an hour early. And the Durham bowlers brought on a guy called Johnny Morris, who was a batsman. He was a guy who flew around the planes with David Gower in Brisbane on the Ashes tour in the early 90s. So he came on to bowl. He wasn't a regular bowler, bowling just some dibbly dobblers. And Brian, a couple of bowls. He was on 497. This was going to be the last over of the match. And on the 5th ball of the over, Brian came down the wicket to meet him, and Johnny dropped it in short and clocked him on the helmet. He got hit on the helmet on the 5th ball of the over by this dibbly dobbler. And so 1 ball was left in the match. 1 ball was left, and Morris came up in bowl, and Brian just caressed it through the covers in cover field. There was hardly any gaps. He picked the gap through the cover. 497 he was on, 501. Raised his bat and walked off the field.
500 and something. I actually scored a double 100 in that game, but nobody ever remembers that. I got 204, and then I was outscored by Brian, somewhat by 300, but that's another story. But when we declared, he came into bat on the get this right, the second day, third day, could have been third day, I can't remember, but no, second day, and he was knocked out overnight. And then we played a Sunday league game, the old-fashioned. So we split the game, but we had a 40-over game on a Sunday. And a couple of our bowlers got injured. So when we came back to play the championship, finish the championship game on the Monday, we were 2 bowlers down. So when Dermot Reeve, the captain, and Phil Bainbridge, the captain, tried to set up a game, remember they'd got Lara in the team and how good Lara was playing, how well he was playing. We couldn't get a total that we felt was fair for them to chase, especially with 2 bowlers injured. So they just decided to go for batting points and for us for bowling points. So come the last part of the we had tea. When we came out, Phil Bainbridge said, "Look, will you have a little bowl, because all our bowlers are knackered. We can't lose the game. We can't win the game. Let's just get off the field. And if he gets the record, he gets the record, and if he doesn't, he doesn't. You know, it's not our concern really." So myself and Wayne Larkins, a former England player, bowled at either end, and Brian got closer and closer to the record and started playing really sensibly. And what he didn't realise was at 5:20, the umpires could pull the stumps up because the game would be a draw. He thought he'd got till 6 o'clock because they were the hours of play, but he didn't realise that was a rule that was in England. The second or third ball of that over, he still wants 4 to break the record. So I did. I bowled him a bouncer, and I know I'm the only man in the history of the game to hit somebody on the head on 497. and it did. It clunked him straight on the head, right on the badge. He did flap at it 3 times and missed it on all 3 occasions before it arrived. I think I did him for lack of pace, not the actual pace of the bouncer. And it did clunk him on the head, and he called the physio on. So the physio came, and I think he just wanted a drink and just compose himself. And Keith Piper, who was batting at the other end for Warwickshire, walked down the wicket to him, and he said, "Brian," he said, "you do know this is the last over of the game, don't you?" And he said, "No, it's till 6 o'clock. He said, "No, at 5:20, we walk off. The umpires will pull the stumps up because there's no result." And he wasn't aware of that. So he literally sent everybody off the field. The physio disappeared. I went back to my mark. And as far as I recall, I bowled a very straight, good length ball that was going to hit middle stump halfway up, and he backed away and carved it over backward point, 1 bounce 4, and that was it. We all ran off the field with 501 next to his name. So, you know, it was an amazing experience to be amongst greatness again, and you know that was greatness of the highest order.
Well, we didn't. We couldn't celebrate because we actually had a quarter-final game the following day at the Oval. We had a quarter-final game in the Benson Hedges Trophy, and it was a big thing. The media circus. I was in. Normally in county cricket, you don't get that many people watching county cricket, but that afternoon, because of the search situation, people were coming into the ground from work and from school. So there was like 5,000 people in the ground. All the media had left. The test match was on at Nottingham. That had finished early, which is only an hour away from Edgbaston. So the media had all travelled in. So it was a big bit of a circus develop around that. So he had loads to do, all the media staff. And then the following morning he was on breakfast TV. So when we arrived at the ground to play that quarter-final at the Oval it was at in London, he arrived half an hour before play started, and he was tired. He hadn't hardly got to bed. He was doing all these media stuff, all these calls and breakfast TV that morning, and we lost the toss, and Surrey batted first. And he started off in the slip. He started off in the slips, where he normally fielded. And he said, "Sorry guys, I can't see the ball. My eyes are all a bit fuzzy. Got stars and stuff, lights in them." So he went out onto the boundary to field just to give him a break. And 10 minutes later he came and says, "Listen guys, I'm dizzy. I'm really struggling to see." So thankfully the umpires were quite amenable. They were quite understandable and said, "Okay, off you go." So he went off, and when we got off the field after the bowler overs, he was dead asleep. He was flat asleep. And so we were chasing 270 in this total. And he's batting number 3. And Bob Woolmer said, no, leave him, let him sleep. Just let him sleep. Don't wake him up. Just let him sleep. So we started our innings. We lost the wicket early. He would normally go in at number 3. He went into bat at number 6 that day eventually. And he got 70 odd. He got 70 odd runs. And that was his best one day innings of that summer. And he was flat on his feet. He could hardly see the ball coming. And he got 70 odd runs to see us home in that quarter-final game.
It was a little bit like that because, the game was at Edgbaston. We came off the field. We went into our dressing room. They went into their dressing room. And there was pandemonium next door. And we were really quiet in our dressing room because we'd realised we'd just been part of history that probably we didn't want to be part of, really. But it was an amazing thing to be part of. So it was a bit of a double-edged sword to it. And a few of us went next door and shook him by the hand and said, well played, amazing, well done, congratulations, what else can you say? But of course we had to pack up and get on the road and go back home because we were probably starting a game either the next day or the day after, So that was the thing about county cricket. You didn't have time really to dwell on too much, of the negative stuff. You're into the next game and away you go. But to have the record against you didn't sit great with a lot of people. The fact that I bowled the ball that he scored his 501 off, it didn't bother me because I wasn't really a bowler, so I didn't worry about it too much. In fact, it was a bit of fun as far as I was concerned.
For me, that year of 1994 was my first year as a journalist. Freelance journalist working for local Birmingham newspapers on cricket, on mainly Warwickshire and Aston Villa football as well. So obviously that Brian Lara story was a huge one that I needed to be part of. Unfortunately, I couldn't get to the game that day, on that Monday, that he broke the record against Durham. But I was able to go along after the game and I attempted to get Brian's interview. I politely asked him if he could spare 5 minutes and he said, I'm ever so sorry, I've got a train to catch. So I left it at that and I stood aside and waited for some of his teammates to give their account. And then Brian wandered over to me maybe a minute later and said, well, look, if it's only going to be 5 minutes, let's do it, which I appreciated. We did the interview. I think I've still got it in an old tape somewhere. And he was excellent, articulate as he always was. But what a day. I mean, I'm a Birmingham boy, as I said. So for a Warwickshire player to go and break a world record like that. In fact, that reminds me of the world record he broke of Hanif Mohammed. Another friend of mine, Mushtaq Mohammed, the former Pakistan captain and coach, he came along that evening and he put Brian on the phone to his brother Hanif, and Hanif congratulated him for beating his 499 and they had a chat for a few minutes, so that was a nice touch. But other than that, there was a lot of well wishers there and a lot of media around. But
you did shake him up with a bouncer. You can probably talk about that.
The only man in the history of the game to hit somebody on the head on 497. None of the other great fast bowlers have ever done that.